Okay, we're back for our selective meeting. I don't have a name tag because at Water and Sewer, where it's also at, they ran off with that after the meeting, and it's probably downstairs in Ben North's office, but I think we'll be okay without that too. Moving on, call the meeting to order. We've already had the Pledge of Allegiance for the special town meeting. So move on. Is there any additional agenda and consent calendar items? Seeing none, any delegations or any member of the public that would like to address the board on any topic at this point? Okay, seeing none, we'll start with the approval of the minutes first of the public hearing of June 21st, 2023.
Okay. Move to approve the public hearing minutes of June 21, 2023 as submitted.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Dan. Comments or corrections? All those in favor?
Yeah,
oh, I'm sorry, Ann.
Yeah, so when it says the people who were present, it said Barry Sheckley, but I don't think he was there that night.
Barry came in and was sitting towards the back of the room. He was about 5 minutes late.
Okay,
he never sat
that's-
up at the table, but he was here.
Okay, all right, because I was just looking at the people at the table. Got
Okay.
it. All right, all set then.
Okay, if there's no other comments. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Carries unanimously. Okay, the regular meeting?
Yeah, move to approve the regular meeting minutes of June 21, 2023 as submitted.
Second?
Second.
Seconded by Roseanne. Any comments?
Dan,
Dan?
Dan, you have
No.
None?
Oh,
Okay.
Yeah, I just had a couple, page 2. So, let's see. I felt like there was just a reference to on page 2, and then concerning the charge concerning the referendum. I don't think that that's really referenced. It looks like a different item is referenced here, so.
How far down are you?
Okay,
Yeah, I
let's
don't
see.
know.
Yeah, we're at, I looked online at this, so this is my first time looking at it on paper here. So it wasn't residency requirement, so. Okay, so it actually starts on page 1. So consider the amendment about the automatic budget referendum, and then the reference that follows, I mean, the text that follows concerns the 4-year terms.
Oh, okay, I see what you mean.
So, okay, so I think that's just misplaced there. I think that could belong someplace else. And then similarly on page, again, I'll have to just see, but charge 8, so if you keep going, which I
Okay.
think will be
Page 3.
page 3. I think we have the same thing there on charge 8, where it's to substitute the electronic and website publication, et cetera, and the text that follows has to do with a different
different.
charge. So those are the two that I just happen to spot. I didn't go through it with a fine-tooth comb, but those are, so we may just want to check those couple of pages to make sure that.
Okay, see, we have to.
We have our own changes later on that are clear. You know what the Board of Selectmen has recommended. But I just noticed that the references were.
Okay, we could either table these and come back with that straightened out for the next meeting, or we could approve it, requesting those changes be made.
Yeah, I'd say if we could make a couple of changes and
Okay.
anything else we happen to notice
Okay.
in that one section.
Okay,
Okay.
So are we voting on this or tabling it?
we're voting on it. Any other comments? Okay, if there's none, all those in favor with of approving the minutes with the changes to be made as recommended, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? That carries unanimously. Moving on to the very small
Has consent.
consent calendar.
Move to approve the consent calendar for the regular meeting of July 5th, 2023 in the amount of $246.58.
Is there a seconded by Roseanne? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Abstentions? Carry unanimously. Moving on to our regular business items, we have a representative from York Correctional Institute here tonight to give us a presentation. If you'd like to come up, give us your name and what you'll be presenting to us tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you.
What a nice name.
Greetings. My name is Ann Saint, and I work for the Department of Corrections, and I work at the headquarters in Weathersfield. I'm over a program with the prison system that trains inmates job skills. In 1965, the federal government gave every state $2 million to start a program to train inmates and get them marketable skills so when they went back to society, they'd be able to get a job. So all the states were to pay the money back, and they did. We are self-supporting. We get no legislative funds. So all the products that we manufacture and make go back into our program. If we make excess amounts and the governor needs some money, if we have a budget shortcut, then we offer to give up money for them. So we don't get any taxpayer money. But so we started this program, and it started out just small, doing little things. We did almost 10 million. We closed out June 30th for the state of Connecticut this year. We do with several different products. The inmates at York, presently, I trained them to do Braille. So now they're Braille and books for K through 12, blind children of Connecticut. They also do some sewing garments and stuff there for the clothes they wear. And then you have Cheshire. We do all your license plates there, obviously. So those are all done there. And we also have silk screening. And we can sell to anybody that's tax supported or has a 501c. So you're eligible to buy from us. So at that plant, we would do silk screening. So you can buy t-shirts, jackets, whatever. We silk screen on there. We do embroidery, hats, jackets, polo shirts, whatever. If you have an event, you can buy through us and save money. We also, at McDougall Walker, we have a welding operation where they get a welding trade. We do carpentry work there, and we do a lot of furniture for all the colleges in Connecticut. So we do a lot of dorm furniture, dining room furniture, classroom furniture for UConn, Southern, all those. So anyways, one thing that Connecticut didn't have when I came to Connecticut was they didn't have a PI program. That's a private industry enhancement program. That's where you can marry up with a private sector, and they would set up an operation behind the wire at the prison, and they would train inmates a job skill. And what we're proposing is that through Pursuit Aerospace that we make what's called a mill end. And the mill end is a slug that goes into a blade on the aircrafts. So it is part of just one piece, and it goes through a grinding process. So these women at York would learn to be machinists, which is really good for them because there's not a lot of female machinists out there. So we're proposing to put it at York, and we have presently 700 women at York, age 17 to 57. So for the program starting out, we're suggesting that we're asking for 28 inmates to start, offenders to start the program. We're going to run 24-hour shift, 4 hours apiece, 6 shifts. So that allows for 4 people each shift to work on there because there's only there's 5 machines that it has to go through, grinding machines, and then the end is where it comes out and it actually stamps the number in the end mill, and then it goes to a packaging so that it can be tracked where the part came from. So I set up with the Federal Bureau of Prisons and through the justice system and said, we don't have a PI program here, and 45 other states do. So you have to go through a certification process to get this done. So the first thing you have to do, you fill out their application, but you have to go through the Department of Labor to make sure you tell them you're not going to be any displacement of citizens' jobs. There's presently 485 machinist jobs open right now in Connecticut that are not filled. So we have to make sure we do that. We have to go through the historical preservation to make sure we don't disrupt any land, animals, pollute any air or anything in the operations we're going to do. We have to go to the environmental office and get those paperwork filled out as well. Another thing is you have to meet with the labor unions to let them know you're not going to displace any civilians with jobs. And you have to come in front of the Chamber of Commerce or Town Hall to let them know that you're starting up a business, because we have to be on your minutes to say that I presented to you that we're going to start this operation. The Bureau of Justice will not let you start this unless you've addressed everybody and you've shown good faith that You're not going to displace anybody, and so the certification is going to come through as Tech College, community college. That's where the certification will come from, and they'll be doing their on-the-job training at York. We're going to use the fire safety building that's empty now and set the machinery up in there. So my job is to come here today to tell you about what we're doing and let you know that with all good intentions, we're not doing anything to take any jobs away from citizens at all. But we want to help people get a trade because it will lower recidivism rates. It will give them something to do to keep from idleness. And one of the nicest things about them being in the PI program is they get paid prevailing wage. They have, out of their wages, they get taxes taken out. They also have to pay for any restitution that they owe anybody of crimes that has to be coming out of their pay. If they owe court fees or anything like that, that comes out because they would go back into society and still owe that money to everybody. This way they can earn it and pay it back before they get out and they can go out with a trade. So I'm open to, but so if you guys ever want to buy from us, we can help you out. We do signs, indoor, outdoor, we do everything. We do decals for your cars, so we have that.
Our finance director's in the back. He will be
Yay.
talking to you on your way out, for sure.
Absolutely. So I just wondered if you had any questions for me.
It's very informative. I have had a tour of York to see what is done there as far as the training and so forth, and giving skills to some of the clients there, and so it's really impressive. So I'm very supportive of something like this. I think it's a great product. You know, making people come back into society with skills and ability to contribute and so forth like that. So I know Trina, I've talked to the warden there several times, so I've my questions, but
yes.
I'd be great to see if anyone else had any questions or comments for you. Anyone else?
I had a conversation with my 23-year-old yesterday about the fact that we need to have more job programs in prisons. So this is exactly the conversation we're having.
Wonderful.
I work at Pratt & Whitney. We use these end-mills all the time, so
Yes.
I'm familiar with the products.
Okay,
So
good.
I think it's great.
Thank you.
Okay.
Sounds like a wonderful program, and good luck with it. Just a question, are there any permitting requirements that you haven't met that you still need to meet? I'm just wondering if,
No, we've met all those.
You've
I've already
done
gotten those
all
taken
that.
care of. So all I have left to do was this meeting today and the one with
Gotcha.
the laborers union,
Okay.
which is aircraft machinist.
it's a great, wonderful skill set to have.
Yes, thank you.
Thanks.
Okay.
Yeah?
Other comment?
I think it's impressive that you can get into, so it'll be machining blades that go into jet engines. And,
Yes.
and they're going to set up the machines there. And would it be possible at some point when they start bringing in the machines for the board, those that are interested, to have a tour?
Absolutely.
It'd be very. It's probably CNC, computer-controlled equipment
Right.
that they'll bring in. And,
Yeah. Just a month before you want to go on a tour, I just have to get you certified to go into the prison. That's just a
Yeah,
background check.
That'd be great. But what a
Yeah.
wonderful skill, and there's certainly a need for that in, in this state particularly with Pratt & Whitney and Sikorsky and other manufacturers. So that's great.
Thank you.
Very good.
Any other comments?
Yes, I would just ask you again, how many women are involved in the program?
So right now we have 20 women that are certified, Braille certified through the National Library of Congress. We will have 28 women working as machinists.
And do you have a waiting list?
They have to sign up. They can't have any infractions or anything like that. So they have to be a good offender. You know, they can't be problemless. So Pursuit will actually interview them, hire them, and give them jobs when they get out.
Oh, that's wonderful. So even after they get out.
Yes.
It's a win-win.
So so we're working on the contract with our attorneys right now. So we're on the draft stage. We're just adding little things in here and out, saying, they make sure that the inmate has to sign a voluntary agreement too, because you can't make somebody work that's in prison. So it's, and that they know they'll pay taxes and that they have to pay restitution. We're not going to ask for them to do room and board right now. Some states do room and board, which helps bring the tax, but it takes the burden off the taxpayers for some states. We're a very small state, considered other states are large.
That's great.
So this is a nationwide program?
It is. Every state has an industry program. Hawaii does, Canada does, so the federal has one too. And we all go, I sit on the board of National Board of Corrections, so we meet twice a year, and all states come to once a year in April. So everybody comes and we do workshops to see what other states are doing and to help, do what we can.
Kudos to you.
Okay, thank you.
That's great.
Did you have something?
I'm all set.
I
Thank
see
you so
there's like
much.
Thank you for
three
very-
ands up there, huh?
Yeah, thank you so much for
That's right.
a very informative presentation. Thank you so
Okay,
much.
thank you for allowing me to come.
That's good work.
Excellent.
And this is good too, because we've had some of the inmates there helping out in the community, gardening and working in the parks, and that's been not happening because of COVID, and I was notified by the warden that that'll be starting up again in the next few weeks, so yeah, that's a positive step too. Okay, moving on, next thing is discussion and possible action, Board of Education creation of an unexpended funds account. We have some documentation in our folders that talks about the request from the Board of Ed through Jeff, that they're requesting that up to 2% of the overall operating budget placed in the funds in an unexpended account. And then there's some follow-up documentation about the Connecticut General Statutes and contributions to the fund and so forth like that. Anybody want to make a presentation on behalf of the Mariana?
So we have been discussing it for Mariana Stevens, Director of Finance for the East Lyme Board of Education. So we've been discussing it for a while. It kind of got put on the back burners a few years ago. And then I think at one of the Board of Finance meetings, Denise had suggested that perhaps we look into it. So we went through it. I did some research. There are quite a few municipalities, about 47 that responded to my survey that currently have one. I had a total of 69 responses, 47 have it, the remaining don't, and then I didn't really get a response from the other one. So it really is, I think, a useful tool. We think it's a useful tool in the situation that happened, for example, this current year. We're fortunate that we came out of that and we don't have a deficit, but it would have been helpful if we would have had something in the unexpended funds balance account, then we wouldn't have had such an issue, and there wouldn't have been such a concern with possibly using our fund balance. So I don't know if anyone has any questions. I hopefully you've had time to take a look at it. It's strictly statutory. We're not doing anything outside of that. The account will be held at the town. There'll be a reconciliation process between my office and the finance director's office. Any expenditures will be approved by the Board of Education, reported to the finance director. They'll issue, or the finance office here at the town, they will be the one issuing the purchase order, similar to how we handle the capital projects expenditures. It's approved, and then we send the request here. So, any questions?
Also, just to point out that
Sure.
if you look in the first paragraph, it says, the Board of Finance in each town having a Board of Finance. So this would be basically us providing a recommendation to the Board of Finance. The approval would be theirs from this, but obviously they coming through us first. Are there any and one thing to point out too is that up to 2% of their budget can be returned into this, but it can't exceed 4%. So it's not like over
Correct.
a 10-year period you could have a lot of money sitting.
Correct. We wanted to put a cap on it because the
At
intent is
4%.
not to just keep accumulating into this account.
Okay, question, Ann?
Yeah, so I guess more of a comment. So I'm looking at like if there was 2% of the budget this year, let's just ballpark say $80 million. That's $1.6 million, and it stays in their account.
No,
My
it would be our
concern-
budget. I'm sorry, it's 50+ million. It's not the town budget. It would be just a percentage of our budget. So,
Okay.
so it would be the Board
I-
of Ed budget,
So
which
that-
is 50.
Okay, so
Roughly $1 million.
Right.
Yeah,
So
it's
what's that?
It's about,
I don't-
Yeah, it's
about
about a
1.2
Yeah.
million.
Right.
I had a calculator
Yeah.
before. I don't have one now. I'm not a
Yeah,
mathematician.
but 2% of 50 is a million.
Yeah. Yeah.
So-
So it's over a little over a million.
We can do that in our head.
Yeah.
Not a mathematician. Okay, So I guess my concern is then the rainy day fund, because normally the funds go back to the rainy day fund. So that is really my concern, that then the rainy day fund, you know, that affects the bond rate would be decreased. So that's my concern. The other thing is, in the statute, it says, where is it? Line, 1, 2, 3, 4. It said, making appropriations for the school district, I think it's line 6 down, for each town may deposit into a non-lapsing account. So it doesn't say shall.
No, it's entirely, it's not, it's a statute that allows for it.
Yes,
It is not
exactly.
mandatory.
And that's what I just wanted to bring up.
Just wanted to comment on your, fund balance. So this wouldn't decrease the fund balance. It just, if we put the money in there that we had a balance, it just wouldn't increase it, but it's not going to decrease your fund balance. The money's already appropriated. For example, this fiscal year, the money's appropriated. If we spend it all, it doesn't decrease your fund balance. But if we had 50,000 left over, it would increase your fund balance.
Yeah, because other years you have given back
Correct.
money.
So it just,
you know, so
so
that's what I'm saying.
I don't want to
Okay,
give the
then it wouldn't
perception.
increase it.
It wouldn't
Okay.
increase it.
Exactly.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I have a number of questions and I guess concerns. So I'll begin at the beginning, but I'll just do a couple and then we can go down the line here. So I'm looking at this statutory language, and I'm seeing that a Board of Finance, if that is the, the body that deals with the finances in a town, Board of Selectmen in each town having no Board of Finance, and then, or the authority making appropriations for the school district. So I guess a question I have, a basic question is, it happens to be in front of us, you brought this one ahead of us, but our charter contemplates appropriations through Board of Selectmen and Board of Finance. So I'm looking at what was written, and I guess in Jeff's in his memo to us, he refers to it as an outline. So first of all, what form am I looking at? This doesn't look like a policy, it doesn't look like an ordinance, I'm not sure what this really is. And then secondarily, who are the parties to authorize this? It may just be beyond Board of Finance, and it may be a legal question for council. But it seems to me that the way we usually operate in the universe of appropriations is Selectmen and then Finance. So that's one concern I have. Another is just that so it's a form and process question, I guess. And then at first when I heard about these non-lapsing accounts maybe about a year ago or so, I thought, well, this is not a bad idea. And then I started to kind of mull it around more in my head. I looked up some that were online from Connecticut municipalities, and they vary. 1%, 2%. I think by the year 2018 you could have then 2%.
2020, I think, is when
Right.
they bumped it to
Yeah.
2%. Before that, it was
Okay.
1.
So, and they have a good variety on what you can use it for. Again, educational purposes, but the statute is very bare-boned. I think we're all looking at the
That's the
10 lines
statute,
or
exactly.
so.
That's
So
it.
you have to supply the rest of it. And I guess my question is, maybe we need more time to digest what needs to go in here if we're going to take this approach. Again, who's authorized? How does it look? What is it? What's its form? But there's a part of me that's a little bit reluctant, because we do have this appropriation process that's quite detailed. It's clear. It does allow the public to be involved in a good way. So I'm really reluctant to create some other thing financially that is sort of an aside from the usual process. When we do have an appropriations process where you can come back, we also have an unassigned fund balance and reference where emergencies can be taken care of. In fact, that's what the unassigned fund balance is for. It's for emergencies one-time, you know, potential land deals or this type of thing, opportunities, if you will. So I'm just really reluctant to kind of start something else that then has, I'm not sure of what its real purpose is. And in Jeff's memo, I didn't see purpose or meaning described. So maybe you could elaborate on that.
Sure. Well, so one, this wouldn't be an addition. We've already, the money's appropriated, so I mean, you can certainly talk to your town attorney. I'm not an attorney, but just having 20-plus years experience as a finance director, the money's appropriated, so you're not going through an additional appropriation process.
No, that was my point.
Oh, okay.
All.
Oh, all right.
That you're having an additional fund when you're already,
Additional
you've already
account.
been appropriated all
Right.
of your funds, and that you use at your discretion.
Right, and this is statutorily being allowed,
Right.
you can see. So, I'm not going to argue the semantics of that. That could be something, you can discuss with the town attorney. But I think the point and the purpose of this and what the research that I did is, I understand that there's an unassigned fund balance, but if we needed to get an additional appropriation, for example, last year, then it is, kind of a 3-month process by the time we get through Board of Selectmen, Board of Finance. I think the intent here is just if there's something that comes up, we have at many times there's special, I hate to use special education all the time, but there's unanticipated expenses that pop up that we can't budget for, we can't know. So this fund in our thought process would be helpful in that we don't go to the unassigned fund balance. We don't touch it. It doesn't decrease your unassigned fund balance. The money was already appropriated, and then we would just have an account. It wouldn't be a separate fund. It would just be an account at the town. It wouldn't be a separate fund. We wouldn't create a separate fund. So I think that was the intent, to just help with unanticipated expenses that come up, that arise throughout the operations of our budget.
So could you describe then the process that you're contemplating?
So the process,
when there is this unanticipated expense, and the categories were capital, special ed,
and then technology or any or other unexpected, like the situation that we encountered this past year, with the health insurance. So the process would be, if this account is set up and we need to use funds from that account, it would go to the Board of Education. The Board of Education would review, approve, disapprove the expense from that fund. If they approved it, I would send the minutes along with relevant information to the finance office at the town. They would then issue a check, pay the invoice. They would have, they would keep accounting on their end. I would also keep an accounting, and then I would reconcile on a monthly basis, similar to how we reconcile our operating budget currently at the town.
So the appropriations process is then somehow it's going over to Board of Ed in essence for the purposes of this amount of money,
well,
the 2%.
But it's already money that's been appropriated.
Right, I understand that. But then if we didn't have this account and you had a need, you were in deficit or whatever the issue is, then what would happen would be you'd come before Board of Selectmen, Board of Finance, and if it's large enough, town meeting.
Correct.
Right. Yep. So that's the process. So the question is, that's just a different animal.
So
I have other questions, but I'd like to let my colleagues ask some if need be.
All right, I'll go next. It's interesting that this would be on the agenda this evening, as we have the charter revision questions as an upcoming item. Connecticut's still a small state with 169 towns, and they all have their own little individual quirks. But for the past several charter revision commissions, this has been a topic about whether to have a bifurcated budget, and the decision has been we are one town. We are not the Board of Ed as their little enclave. the Board of Selectmen, it's a one-town budget. And I think that has served us well. And yes, it is a little bit time-consuming. But I can't believe that if there was an emergency and Niantic Center School didn't have any heat, that we would wait 3 months to get that taken care of. So there is a process. There isn't any other board or commission in town, including the Board of Selectmen, that has, so to speak, a rainy day fund, money set aside for a specific purpose. I think the process of going through the Board of Selectmen, the Board of Finance, for a lot of people in town, this is a big budget, this is a big expenditure. And I think the review from several different viewpoints is very healthy, and it gives opportunity for the public to speak at many levels. And I am not opposed. I'm opposed to this. I think it sets up a separate category for the Board of Ed that even the Board of Selectmen doesn't have. So I think the safety net is there with a 3-step process. And as I said, if it's an emergency expenditure, there isn't one person on this board that isn't going to approve that if the roof is falling in, that we're not going to approve that. We're going to wait 3 months. So you have a budget. You obviously, every one of the commissions has unexpected, unanticipated expenses. But I think, as I said, we have a rainy day fund that all the other boards and commissions contribute to with excess funds, and so I am not in favor of making the Board of Education a standalone.
Yeah. So I have some of the same concerns. At first blush, I thought, well, maybe this is an approach that would solve some of the problems that you've encountered in the past. But then looking at it a little more cynically, I guess you might say, one of the criticisms we hear often is transparency in government in town, and allowing a forum so all the citizens can know really what's going on. Here, you've concentrated power for this fund. It's the sole discretion of the Board of Education. So I think there would be instances, perhaps, where things are purchased or problems are solved outside, really, of the greater public view. And that's concerning to me. I mean, we've heard concerns about the process, which is, I think that's a legitimate concern. We do have a process that works. If there was a big enough emergency, or even not so big an emergency, we're pretty good at responding and getting things taken care of. With the size of your budget and the 2%, after a couple of years, I realize there's a 4% cap in the statute. It's still a lot of money to not have oversight and process control. So unless I hear more, my feeling right now is I'm really not for it.
Bill?
So I started out being opposed initially. The Park and Recs has their kind of version of this, and I didn't really like that when it was first approved. But the more I think about it and I look at our rainy day fund, we spent a lot of time over the years building that up. And we built it up because we knew we needed something to fall back on. And I can see the Board of Ed saying, let's not spend that extra money this year. Let's put it aside so that we can build it up for our rainy day fund. As opposed to saying, well, we're nearing the end of the budget and we got this extra money, so let's go buy, an extra copier or extra pencils or whatever it is that we think we need just in case, because if we don't, it's going to go back to the town. So I just think human nature, if you had your own fund to manage, your own rainy day fund, I think you would try to build it to try to have that in case insurance goes up, in case something goes down kind of thing. So I'm leaning towards saying, don't like it, but I understand it. I started out right where Roseanne was at, saying this is one town, it's a small town. We should all just have one pot and we all pull on it and we all add to it and we're all just one big happy family. So I'm on both sides of the fence.
Okay, and here again, this is ultimately up to the Board of Finance, but obviously, I'm sure they're going to want a recommendation for us, and here we can't give a negative one. One of the things, and Kevin and I talk about this on a very regular basis, the undesignated fund balance. I don't like the rainy day fund. It mounts like this has been yesterday was a rainy day. Let's go out and raid the rainy day fund. It wasn't. It's a undesignated fund balance, and right now we've been working very hard to get up to that 15%. There's nothing magical about 15% except for that's what a lot of the bond commission people like to see and so forth. And Kevin, the recommendation right now is 16.67, which is basically 2 months of operating budget. So if something catastrophic happened globally or something like that in the finance world, you've got 2 months of operating budget. I understand what Roseanne's saying about the one town. We're all in this together. When people have mentioned, let's bifurcate, no, because for when I was up in Salem as a resident trooper and I saw it happen in Colchester, that didn't work out to anybody's betterment up there. And here again, it does not have to be 2%, it can be up to 2%. Within the next couple of months, the Board of Finance is going to be updating their policy for the undesignated fund balance policy. I would like to see possibly work with them, get input from them. Here again, I don't think we have to act on this tonight and say, nope, we're done with this and move it on. I think this would be a good time to look at some of the questions brought up so we can answer those. Working with the Board of Finance. Do they want to get to 15% and have that number there before they start considering whether, okay, how much can they give based on what our returns for the year? I think if we could have some more specificity for what needs to be done as far as getting to what we feel comfortable. Kevin and I have a bonding call next week, and I'm sure we're going to hear, we know that the rates are not where they were, and there are some factors that'll figure into that, and we're a little under the 15%, but it wasn't as if we've dropped dramatically, so I don't really think hoping it won't be a big thing. But that's what I'd like to see. Work together with maybe the Board of Finance, talk to them at their meeting next week, see what we do, work together to come with a policy that they said, yep, we're good with this, or we understand what you're trying to do and the conditions of which we can do that. So a little bit of, I think Bill brought it together really well. If it's your own money, you tend to be a little more careful with it. But then again, we're all, it's one town, and the appropriation process. Board of Selectmen, if we want to get something, we don't have a rainy day fund we have access to, but we have a couple $100,000 every year in contingency. This past year until the very end, and we only used it because we had those unexpected things with the HVAC. But I think looking at it from that aspect, let's do a little bit more research, work with finance, and see if we can come up with some type of a solution with them. Anyone else have more comments?
Can I just make?
Could you clarify that? So 15% is what bond council wants.
That's 15% has always been what people they don't say they want 15%, but that's where you're getting your best bonding rates and so forth, right in that 15% area. If you're at 14.98 or 14.75, that's not much of a difference. But now they're saying 16.67. I don't think the Board of Finance wants to raise it to that level, but they're going to be coming up with a policy for the undesignated fund balance within the next month and a half. I think the best thing to do is have the Board of Ed work with them if they want to pursue this, so that when that policy comes out, it takes into consideration their request, and everyone has that ability.
So for clarification, if let's say that we were to approve this tonight and they had 2%, that would be 2% out of the whole town funds. So
no, it would just be, it'd be out of their
budget.
budget, and we don't have the approval process. Board of Finance would be the one that we could say we're totally in favor of it, and they could say no. But no, it would not be 2% of the town's operating budget. It would be at the end of the year, what did you have left in that year that's ending's operating budget?
Okay,
So if I can just make a comment, we will not have $1 million left over
No.
at any given year. I mean, last year, I think we had $20,000 maybe. There were a couple of years where we put in budget freezes because there were some overages with special education costs. There was some, there was a state, the state had, one year we had to come up, both the town and the board had to freeze funds because the governor cut funding, so we had more money left over there. But I just want to reassure everyone, we will not have $1 million left over at the end of the year
I
out
think
of our
over the
budget.
last 7-year period, you've given back a total of about 1.5. So you're talking some of the vicinity of a couple $100,000 on an average. And that would probably be a good thing that have research when you go talk to finances. This is how much money you've had over the last several years, and show what each year has been. So that would, I think, give a better perspective to people to know what you had each year. This year we know is a tough year. And we know a few years ago, we had to make an appropriation out of the undesignated fund balance for both the town and for the Board of Ed, because we had that when we were self-funded in healthcare, which is why we moved to the state 2.0.
Yeah. So I just so everyone, it's not to build up this balance. It's there. It was a recommendation by the chairman of the Board of Finance when we had that deficit, and we had been reporting to them on a monthly basis. So she had asked us why we hadn't pursued this, and again, so we thought it would be a good idea.
I guess I could understand what you said, Kevin, where like with the Board of Selectmen, there's a contingency, you said of, $200,000. That I can understand. But to say up to 2%, and I know that you say you're not going to get there, but for me, that just kind of raises a red flag to go up to that number. If, if it's $200,000, fine. But once you get up to the million, even if you don't think you're ever going to get there, that's where I have concern.
The board, if you
personally
look at the contribution to the fund, we make a request of the Board of Finance. The Board of Finance can say, no, we don't want to contribute $50,000. We only want you to contribute, we will only approve $25,000. So the contribution to the fund is in the hands of the Board of Finance, not the Board of Education. The Board of Education makes the request, but they don't have to approve it. The approval of the expenditures rests with the Board of Ed because they are the board that oversees expenditures statutorily for the Board of Education. But the contribution to the fund is not in our control. We can only request. So I just want to make
a quick point there about the contingency fund. So on the town side, those contingency funds are not non-lapsing.
Correct.
They are installed, if you will, into the budget on a year-by-year basis. And as I recall, Anna Johnson, our previous finance director, informing us when Ann and I sat and Bill on Board of Finance, that those amounts are very historically based. So, they're very specific to a specific need that you anticipate based on the last 5-10 years, whatever. So, I'm still wondering about the authority of Board of Selectmen in this process. It's not entirely clear to me. I'm not loving the language of this statute, but that's another issue.
Yeah,
but I still think that there's perhaps something here, because in many of those, the ones that I happen to see, just a handful at this point, there's definitely, town council or Board of Selectmen plus finance involved.
But we can put constraints above the state. So we could say that we want to limit it, cap it to 0.5%.
Sure.
We could cap it to 100,000. And like you said, she could come and say at the end of the year, I've got 1%. And the Board of Finance says, we'll put 0.25% into the contingency fund, and the rest of it's going into the town's rainy day fund.
Well, that's why I was pointing out that we're trying to build up to a percent, or to be determined by the Board of Finance, to have them determine, okay, what would be there. And the only thing we had, if we did move a recommendation tonight, was no amount of money or percentage, just be to recommend the creation of an unexpended education funds account pursuant to the general statutes. Nothing beyond that. That's all we were looking to possibly do. I would encourage them to talk to the Board of Finance, because they'd be the one to lay out the specifics in that. Ann, did you have some more comments?
I understand, Bill, what you're saying, and it can definitely be drafted with guardrails, lots of guardrails. But I still feel like I have that basic question of what is the authority of this board with respect to this, other than saying, oh, here, Board of Finance, go forth and create.
But wouldn't we read an ordinance or something that would put all those constraints on it?
So this is not clear from here. I mean, is it an ordinance?
I think this gives
Well,
us the ability to create an ordinance to execute something like this.
Well, with town attorney present, if we're going to
Right.
create an ordinance, we have to be very careful as to not, state statute always wins out over an ordinance in most cases, correct, as far as something like this?
Even over our charter.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, state statute.
The short answer is it depends.
I knew that was yes, yes. Yeah.
Yeah, if the state says not to exceed 1%, and we as a town say not to exceed 0.25%,
We're okay.
I mean,
we meet
no.
the
Meet the
requirements.
standard.
I
I
think
mean-
this is where we can't say 5%, because the
Yeah.
state's
Right.
already
Yes.
said,
Yeah, I mean,
yeah.
within the things they let you do, I can
Yeah.
see that we can have guardrails, more or less, percentages, et cetera, et cetera. And then, my question is more at the beginning of, is more, whose authority is it? Is it Board of Selectmen and Board of Finance together to create this,
Well,
this ordinance, or I know we create ordinances, but to create this memorandum of understanding? I've seen all kinds of permutations, as you ladies probably have, with, you know,
Yeah.
and I've only just begun to look at these, like the town of Tolland or
Yep, that's
Colchester. all
correct.
these
Yep,
ones
some
that
some have
these.
them as a resolution, some it's a memorandum. It's different
Right,
in
right.
in all towns.
So that's that, but you still, you still have the fundamental question of appropriation authority, you know, which you have to decide, you know, how much of that you're willing to relinquish, you know, to.
I would recommend that, work with Board of Finance, because with them regarding their undesignated fund balance policy, and see if something can be worked out, and then if you have something to bring back at that point in time. I don't think we're saying no, we're saying we have a lot of questions to be moving forward. And it wouldn't be going into effect until the end of this current fiscal year anyway. So we have some time to research this a little bit. Okay, any other questions? Thank you, Mariana.
Thanks.
Thank you so
Thank
much
you.
for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Moving on, we have a few appointments to boards and commissions.
Yes, okay. The first of these appointments, move to appoint Wendy Fiore of 5 Atwood Drive, Niantic, to serve as a member on the Commission on Aging on behalf of the town of East Lyme, with a term to expire on January 5th, 2026.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Any comments? Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Carried unanimously. Next one.
Move to appoint Harvey Beeman of 11 Green Valley Lakes Road, East Lyme, to serve as a member of the Commission for the Conservation of Natural Resources on the behalf of the town of East Lyme, with a term to expire on January 8th, 2024.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Seconded. All those, comments? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye. Okay.
Opposed? Abstentions? Carried unanimously.
Okay,
Go
and the
ahead.
last of these, move to appoint William Follett of 10 Francis Lane, Niantic, to serve as a member on the Brookside Farm Museum Commission on behalf of the town of East Lyme, with a term to expire on January 5th, 2026.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
And seconded by Dan. Comments? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Carried unanimously. Moving on, it's an appointment, but this is a little bit different. I gave you the background a little bit in your packages. In accordance with the town ordinance 150.031, the Board of Selectmen appoint a blight enforcement officer. Currently, that's the zoning official, which is Mr. Mulholland. He and I have talked with the anticipated increase in time that might be needed, or probably will be needed to be dedicated to short-term rental concerns, coupled with, we do get more and more complaints related to blight. I'm recommending that we change that to the building official, Mr. David Garside, who's here tonight, as the blight officer. Dave has extensive background in blight enforcement in previous towns where he served as a building official. So any questions or any comments regarding this before we move it? Dave, do you want to come up, maybe just give us a quick background in some of your blight enforcement and so forth like that?
Hi, everybody. Dave Garside. I actually started my enforcement career, inspection career with the City of New London as a blight officer. Worked under a HUD grant. So I had a couple of years' experience in there, going to court, actually working with the town people, trying to get things cleaned up. In the town of Waterford, I actually worked with blight also. We had it under our building department. We actually used the property maintenance code, which we adopted, which made it easier and cleaner for us because we're using one of the model codes. So it's a hard thing to do. You don't want to try taking on enforcement right out of the gate. You want to get compliance. So working with people, I found it was much easier trying to get compliance. If they had needs, we had mechanisms in London to get grants and whatever to help fix the properties up. And so, you know, it's not just about taking enforcement on people, taking them to court. It's about getting the areas cleaned up and the blight taken care of and addressed.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for Dave? Ann?
So for the process, do you normally then like send a letter and say, hey, you know, your property has these issues, can we resolve them? Can you discuss this with us? Is that kind of
Yeah,
how it works?
there's a couple of mechanisms to do it. In London, we actually started taking the tack to actually go out and do inspections in areas. So this way you're not singling out individuals, you weren't, you know, calling out, you actually said we'd be coming into this neighborhood. So that worked. Well, you do it off complaints also. You have complaint forms. Sometimes they're anonymous, sometimes they're not. So, you know, there are a lot of mechanisms to get the enforcement out. But us driving around doing inspections all day, it's pretty obvious when you're driving by a property that has issues. You know, sometimes it's, you know, go knock on a door and, you know. So there's a lot of ways to get out there.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Dave?
Kevin, you mentioned short-term rentals. How does that fit into this picture?
Well, this doesn't, but that's another topic we're going to be talking about right after this. So that's why I wanted to, you know, this gives, because one of the problems that I think will come up is the zoning officer's ability to do blight and looking into some of the resolutions and solutions to short-term rentals. So I want to be sure we have, you know, the staff able to do their assigned tasks.
Just a question, who would be the blight hearing citation officer?
That's somebody, right now,
That's just-
that's Ron
Ron Bennett?
Stevens.
Ron
Oh, no,
Bennett.
it's.
Because it can't be,
yeah,
it can't be an employee.
No, it can't be an employee, no. And we need to probably look for another one, because Ron's, you know, is gone part of the year now, so he's indicated us to look for a replacement for that too, so we'll look for that. Normally, it's somebody with the legal background to look into that and
Right.
that type of thing, so. But good point. Any other questions?
Yeah, I got two of them. If Mr. Mulholland doesn't have time to do the blight enforcement, do you have time in your day to do it?
I think I can fit it into the schedule. We would be looking to replace Ed Scarpati as one of the individuals. So we would be able to do it. I do have a part-timer also, so.
And I haven't seen it for a while. Is our blight definition clear enough?
That's gonna be
It
the
didn't
trick
used to
part,
be,
right, because, yeah, it's in the zoning ordinances right now, and, you know, again, municipalities, we were adopting the two I worked for. We adopted the property maintenance code, which is a model code.
So you would expect to adopt that and revise as necessary?
Yeah, exactly. You do ordinance, you go in, you make your revisions, you know, you meet, you have meetings, you know, you do want to have town meetings. One of the things Kevin and I talked about, you do have areas that we would consider rural, so you don't really want to go out there, you know, worrying about the height of the grass. You know, it could be farmland or whatever, so, you know, you do want to do geographical areas, you do want to be mindful of the people you're taking enforcement against.
So you expect to revise the...
I would
necessary,
suggest
or at
that
least
highly.
review
It just makes, it's
Okay.
cleaner, it's in the model codes, the ICC actually have a.
That's one of the things we anticipate happening
Yeah.
is over time is updating and that type of.
Yeah, cleaning it up.
Cleaning it up.
So would this be a separate agency, or is this?
Oh, no,
No.
no, it's not a separate agency now at all. It's strictly, we have a blight ordinance, we'll be updating that, and that's all we'll be doing. We won't be creating any other agencies and no anticipation to hire any additional staff to do it.
So then this would still fall under the preview of zoning?
No,
Review?
it doesn't fall under zoning at all now.
All right.
It just that right now, the blight enforcement officer happens to be the zoning official.
Okay, so this is going to be under the building department.
No, it'll be under the ordinance for the blight ordinance. And the blight ordinance just says that the Board of Selectmen shall appoint a blight enforcement officer. That's it. It doesn't say it's under zoning or under building or anything like that.
But the blight requirements would still reside within the zoning regs?
No, they don't do that right now.
I
That's
mean,
what we're
somebody,
going
yeah, I'm just saying, if I've got something at my house, if I've got an old boat in my front yard or whatever, I should be able to look somewhere to see that that's not allowed.
we have a blight ordinance.
And it's
It's
its own ordinance, it's
Yeah,
not
it's its
in-
own ordinance, several
Okay.
pages long.
Okay,
And,
so it doesn't matter whether it's under zoning or building, it's the same ordinance?
no, and some of those might be hazmat, which wouldn't even fall into those, it would fall
Yeah,
under
no, I
under
just,
deep, so.
I know back 100 years ago when I was on zoning and we were creating, or trying to get blight ordinance created, it was not clear how it was going to be done, so that's kind of where some of my questions.
Now, we did it back probably about 7 years ago,
Yeah.
maybe longer. Any other questions? Okay,
Okay.
for a motion.
So, motion, okay, move to appoint Dave Garside, building official, as the Town of East Lyme Blight Officer.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, abstentions, carries unanimously. Moving on, this is short-term rentals, and, this is, we've seen it in, and I saw Ann Thurlow, who's the chair of zoning, and I asked her to, told her about it, and she's here tonight too, to attend. And Mark Zabarka, one of the town attorneys, will be talking about it in just a minute. East Lyme, just like several surrounding towns, are experiencing a major increase in the number of short-term rentals over the last few years. And properties, it's not hard to go on the website and find that they're advertised on a daily, weekend, weekly, and monthly rental cycle. And as a practice, the town does not allow short-term rentals that are less than 30 days, but some of the beach communities have their own zoning regs that allow rentals for a shorter period of time. But especially in the beach area, and a couple of them which do not allow it, there have been complaints regarding nightly and weekend rentals where large numbers of people come. There's more cars than can be accommodated in a property, excessive noise. When they leave the next day, garbage, people, they'll use anyone's garbage can they can find. As I address the parking problems. Obviously we encourage people, there's nothing that allows that type of activity in the middle of the night. If you're being disturbed and there's excessive noise, I've recommended people, you have to call the police. We'll start looking at the STRs as we're doing now, but if it's something urgent and exigent and immediate, please call the police and they can take action against it. But one of the things I want to see is after Mark Zamarka speaks, consider possibly appointing an ad hoc committee to review our current language, see what's being done elsewhere. Waterford, Groton, Long Point, and Preston communities looking into the increase in short-term rentals as well. Stonington tried to do an ordinance. It didn't go well. They didn't really get a lot of buy-in and get it with people being involved. It didn't work well. We don't want to see that happen. So if there's a desire to move forward this after the presentation, we can ask the town attorney to come up with a charge for a committee, and then we can talk about including who we'd like to see on that committee and so forth like that. But right now, Mark, if you could just give us a little bit of a history and background.
Thank you. Good evening, folks. I'm Mark Zamarka with Waller, Smith & Palmer, the town attorney's office. As the first selectman noted, he has requested me to just sort of give you a brief overview as to where the state of the law currently is with short-term rentals in Connecticut. This is a developing area of law. It's extremely thorny, although we do have a little bit of guidance. The appellate court issued a decision in March of this year. The case is Wibby, W-I-H-B-E-Y, versus the Zoning Board of Appeals. What the appellate court noted that's interesting is that there's an undisputable right of an owner to rent his property, and that stripping an owner of that right is a significant restriction on the rights of ownership of property, and they did that citing a Connecticut Supreme Court decision from 2001. In short, what the appellate court held in this particular case, which was a challenge to short-term, to a zoning regulation attempting to get rid of short-term rentals, What the appellate court noted was that where the zoning regulations allow renting of single-family residences, then short-term rentals are permitted single-family residential uses. What they did in that case, the particular zoning regulations spoke to, they looked at the sign regulations and noted that a residence could have a sign in front noting that it was up for rent. Based on that, the appellate court inferred that renting of single-family residences was allowed, and thus short-term rentals were also allowed. They were not going to take the next step of importing a length of time onto how long a single-family residence could or could not be rented. This is consistent with an opinion letter that we did back in August of last year. We noted that short-term rentals do not violate the underlying residential use in areas where residential uses are allowed as of right. That kind of goes back to the old adage for zoning, that zoning regulates the use of property, not who uses the property. We also did a brief survey of nearby municipalities and how they deal with short-term rentals. The towns of Lyme, Ledyard, and Preston, all in this area, as well as a little farther afield, Simsbury, all have processes in place which acknowledge that short-term rentals are allowed, and they attempt to regulate it. Lyme does so via a zoning regulation. Ledyard does so by an ordinance. Preston does so by a regulation, and Simsbury does so by an ordinance. As we know in town, we have 3 beach communities, as Mr. Siri mentioned, that have their own zoning. If there was to be a committee appointed, if there was something to be done regarding this, it would be our recommendation that it be done via an ordinance, not a regulation, so that it would apply town-wide, including all of the beach communities.
Okay, any questions for Mark before we begin our discussion?
Well, is he going to remain so that?
Yes, he'll be here. I just said Ann, do you have anything you'd like to add at this point in time?
No, I'm just curious to see what the group recommends that needs to be done.
Okay.
I mean, heard both sides.
We both have, yeah. Okay, all right, thank you, Mark.
So, no, I did. So the state, I did have a question. So the state said that if a town allows a rental, then they can't control the length of the rental, or because the zoning regs were silent on the length, that they couldn't infer that there was a length?
What the appellate court, not the state, it's
Oh,
not the
sorry.
legislature,
Yeah.
the appellate court. What they said was that if the zoning regulations allow a single-family residence to be rented, then a short-term rental is also an allowed residential use. They were not going to attempt to draw a line saying what is short-term, what is long-term rental, how long can someone rent their property out for.
And I'm sure you couldn't answer the question of if the zoning regs constrain the length of rental, then whether or not that would have had a different effect from the appellate court.
That's something for the appellate court.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the one thing is we don't have a regulation that specifies any length.
We don't, but...
No, but just to point out, because the appellate court did look at the sign regulations, we do have a similar sign regulation in East Lyme allowing a sign advertising a property for rent.
Okay.
So that's a similarity between East Lyme and the appellate case.
Could you spell the first name on that appellate case?
Sure. It's Wihbey. I can give you the site too, Mr. Cunningham.
Oh, yeah.
Wihbey.
It is 218 Con-App 356.
Thank you.
It's a 23 decision.
356, 2025, yeah.
Okay, and this is, because we have had a couple of the beach communities, and here again, I think we know that people that have, in various areas of town, have rented their properties and with no problems at all for lengthy periods of time, for a long period, many years. But the rise of the Airbnbs and so forth has changed that. We have seen some properties in the beach communities being purchased by LLCs, and basically turned it right around immediately, and you can see them being advertised for nightly use and so forth like that. And you know, my thought is, you know, do we have some form of ad hoc committee to look into things? If this is going to be allowed, do we require inspections? I think that's all these other things that we might want to look into. But you know, we could sit here for the next 45 minutes to an hour thinking about what we should go in there. But that's why I think we need to, if we want to move forward, this form an ad hoc committee, and we can come back and appoint it. We obviously can't appoint it tonight, because I do have some people in the beach community that are that don't have any zoning regs regarding this, or any local zoning regs that for their beach association allow it, interested in serving on this. And it's not that they want to not permit people to utilize their property. They just want to be sure there's some type of oversight to make sure if you have someone who's having nightly rentals and it's causing a disturbance to the neighborhood, too many parking problems, garbage and so forth like that, it's well regulated. And also some of these things, they said there's 10, 12 people in there and it's a house with 3 bedrooms. That probably is not something that we'd like to see, because if we're knowingly allowing something like that to go on, we want to make sure it's been inspected by the proper authorities. Dave's already left, but you know, I'm sure he would agree with that as well. So
Seems to me that our 2 choices are to form the subcommittee or stick our head in the sand and ignore it. And sticking our head in the sand doesn't seem like an intelligent thing to do.
no, I don't think so. So if we don't really need a motion, but I'll work on with town attorney, come up with a charge. I was thinking, and one of the things I mentioned to Ann when we were talking on Thurlow was, it might, since zoning and board of selectmen obviously are the 2 governing bodies basically, I was thinking of having, I don't think we need 10 or 12 people, but I was thinking 5 to 7, and 1 from the board of selectmen and 1 from zoning, so those 2 have a representative on there, as well as, you know, reaching out to some of the beach communities as well, that have offered to be involved.
I was just in my head thinking about what that composition of that board might look like, and I'm just throwing out some ideas here, but or who might be a stakeholder, if you will, and I was keen on that word. But how about since you know safety is often an issue, and you know with these kinds of arrangements, and a fire department, police departments, how do we get
actually
them?
what I was I could get into that in another mention. I was thinking of the fire marshal would probably be one, because he does have enforcement action.
Yeah.
Does have the ear of it does work out of the police station. So I think that's the one representative that could, from someone from that office, be the safety representative.
Okay.
Because to get police, fire, and fire marshal's office, it'd be just too cumbersome.
Yeah.
But I think having the fire marshal's office, because they're the ones that would be doing a lot of input into the requirements you need for those types of places as well.
But they can all be resources that the subcommittee can call on and bring in front of them and discuss.
No, I would think they could actually reach out to anybody. Yeah. But I was thinking of actually having, as sort of a liaison, would be the fire marshal. He could be the contact to get people to come forward.
Yeah. I think so too.
Well, I think it's really an interesting situation, because we have a long history in town of people, particularly in the beach communities, renting their homes for the winter. A lot of the people were from Hartford, the central part of the state, and there was no objection to that. But isn't the definition of a motel where you stay 1 night or 2 nights and then you leave? This is a residential neighborhood, and a neighborhood by definition is a group of people who work together, live together. I mean, I don't want somebody living I don't want a different group of individuals living next door to me who I don't know, coming and going every other day. I think that residences, neighborhoods have some say about this?
According to the appellate court, not really.
Well, I know.
I think in today's world, it's just, I mean, Uber is partial rentals of cars, and people Airbnb, they Airbnb boats. I mean, it's everything is just kind of, there's a lot of, what's the name for it? It's not share, it's something. it's not a community share, but whatever it is, that one-time use stuff of personal property is becoming standard. And that's why I say I don't think we can stop it. I think we're hearing that the appellate court already said you can't just say no. It's already
Yeah,
answered.
and that's just, since we can't say no, I think there's ways to look at, and intelligently regulating it to where people, can be held accountable for the fact that, yes,
Right.
we're allowing our house, the
Yeah, I mean,
houses to be.
We're not going to solve it now, but I mean, yeah, even if it comes into things about if you're not compliant, then fines for noise and litter and all those other
Yeah.
kind of things to kind of control the behavior.
Exactly, so. Okay, we'll move forward with this and try and come up with some language for our next meeting and regarding composition and whatnot. And do you have anything you'd like to add to that at all? You just have to come up to the microphone if you do.
I mean, I have lots of thoughts about it, but I don't know if right here's the
Well, let's,
place.
Okay.
yeah, well, let's hear your thoughts. I'd like to hear your thoughts.
Do you have, do you have them now, or do you want to have a chance to formulate them?
I mean, right now, in the zoning regulations, motels aren't allowed in residential areas, and neither are short-term rentals. But that's, we didn't know what the appellate court had just said, and I'd be curious to know how much we could regulate them, because I do think it is a problem. And I agree with Roseanne, there's not much difference in, someone different coming every night than a motel. So I would just like to know how much zoning would have the power to regulate what the appellate court said.
We think we know what that is. Yeah.
Appellate court rules.
But anyway, I think it'd be interesting to research it.
Yeah, that's right. That's just it.
Part of it, yeah.
Bill made a good thing. Either we bury our hands in the sand, or look at ways
I
to
think we
address
have
it
to deal with
and come
it,
up with
yeah.
it. Exactly. All right, thank you, Ann. Thank you for coming tonight.
Thanks.
I think we need to find out who's on the appellate court.
Justices. All right. All right, any other questions? I think we're all set to move on. Okay, and now we'll move on to item 3A, which is the charter, our charters. Mark, thank you, and thank you for coming tonight, too, to listen in. And Tracy, do you want to talk to us now? Okay.
Good evening. As you know, I'm Tracy Collins. I'm the town attorney. Can you hear me?
Yep, that's better.
Yeah.
So I think a good place to begin, as you know, after your last meeting, you made 4 recommendations to the Charter Review Commission, and they approved your recommendations. Those appear in blue ink. I think your copies are in color.
I think they're in, yeah.
Yeah, I've got red, yeah, that's it.
So red are the ones that you already approved. The 4 recommendations appear in blue, and if you'd like, I have those in front of me and I can point you to the pages where your recommendations were changed.
If you look at page 18, you can see a little one down there.
Okay, why don't
Yes,
you?
I think, actually.
Why don't you- yeah.
I think we were looking online, and then we got our
Okay.
packets, and it's
All
a
right.
little different, but that's, I see where.
So,
where you're going.
the first one is on page 1, 1.4, where that was just going to be changed to authority and purpose of charter.
Okay,
And then that change appears on page 2, also under 1.4. And I believe, Ms. Santoro, that you had asked that sentence be changed, and you can see where that change
Yes.
appears.
Thank you. So we're on page 2 of this Exhibit A.
Got it, thanks.
Oh, I'm sorry. Exhibit A is the actual charter revision.
All right.
Okay.
And the next one I'm all the way past page 11 now. The next one appears on page 18,
Yes.
and I believe we have Mr. Cunningham to thank for that language that appears in section 6.3.4, in which the acceptance of such grant has an adverse impact on future operating budgets.
All right.
The next recommendation that was the fourth one. So those were the 4 recommendations that the selectmen made to the Charter Revision Commission, and those were the changes that were made.
So basically, they used all our recommendations, they incorporated into their final report.
Correct. And would you like me to read those 4 recommendations back to you?
I'm okay, but if you'd like to hear them?
I'm good.
I'm okay.
Oh, we're okay.
I think
Okay.
We're good, yeah.
I think we know.
Okay.
All right. And so you have a resolution before you.
Right. Oh, actually.
I have extra copies if you'd like to see them.
Okay.
Okay, so.
Should be just the first one.
Yes, okay. Whereas the East Lyme Board of Selectmen has received and reviewed the final report with proposed charter amendments dated June 28, 2023, submitted by the East Lyme Charter Revision Commission, and it is hereby resolved that the Board of Selectmen submit the proposed charter amendments to the electors of the town of East Lyme for approval or rejection at the regular election to be held on November 7, 2023.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, any further comments? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention? It carries unanimously. And we also have in our packet too, dated June 28th, the letter from the Charter Revision Commission Chair, Mark Salerno, saying pursuant to Connecticut General Statute, the East Lyme Charter Revision Commission herewith submits the East Lyme Charter Revision Commission final report to the Board of Selectmen, and that's what we have just voted on. And he has all those specifications and clarifications in there. And Tracy, the next thing we're talking about now is the questions that will be on the ballot. And we all have a copy of that right now as far as what we can do. So what we'll be doing, and Tracy does have a resolution for this if we adopt it as is, you know, for the ballot. So do you want to have Tracy walk through these first, and then?
I think it's a good idea.
Yeah, let's go ahead and walk through them, Tracy. I mean, you've seen them a few times, Tracy. You and I could probably close our eyes and recite them right now, but I'll let you go ahead.
A lot of thought went into these. The first thing that I did, I think because I got the sense from the selectmen after the last meeting that you wanted the first 2 questions to be 2 separate questions.
Yes.
So I did divide them up, but you can certainly have them as one question if you'd like. So the first one would be, shall the town charter be amended to increase the first selectman's term of office from 2 to 4? And then the second one is regard to the terms of office of the Board of Selectmen. And then number 3, shall the town charter be amended so that the offices of town clerk and tax collector become hired administrative officers rather than elected officers? And stop me if you have questions, revisions. I tried to keep them as short and to the point, but we're going to get to an explanatory text to explain these ballot questions in my next phase.
Yeah, a little bit.
Because, well, so number 4, shall the town charter be amended so that an appointee to a vacancy in an elective office serves the remainder of the term that was filled? 5, shall the town charter be amended to increase the price of real estate that may be purchased or sold upon the Board of Selectmen's authority and without town meeting approval from $10,000 to $100,000? 6, shall the town charter be amended to provide for automatic approval of requests for special appropriations or transfers of funds if the Board of Finance fails to act on such requests within 30 days? Shall the town charter be amended to not require Board of Finance or town meeting approval of projects funded entirely by state, federal, or private grants that do not require an appropriation of town funds unless acceptance of such grant would have an adverse impact on future operating budgets? That was a tricky one. I realize the language can sound contorted, but I worked this 10 different ways, and it's just a tough
Between Mark
question.
Swino, myself, and Tracy, I mean,
I mean, you have a lot to say in there,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
it's clear.
Actually,
I
it's
think
clear,
pretty
and-
Yeah.
we'll
Yeah.
Number 8, shall the charter be amended to increase the Board of Selectmen's authority to make special appropriations with Board of Finance approval from $10,000 to an aggregate of $100,000 per town department in each fiscal year? I just noticed something. That should say the town charter. Number 8, shall the town charter be amended
Okay, good.
to increase the Board of Selectmen? It should be consistent in all of them.
yeah, number 9 would be the same way.
Yes.
Yes.
Number 9, shall the town charter be amended to substitute electronic and town website publication for newspaper publication as allowed by law? Number 10, shall all other proposed revisions be made to the town charter to update and be consistent with the remainder of the town charter, long-standing town practices? I'm going to put a comma there. I added
Yeah.
that Oxford comma.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah,
So Mr. Sheckley would be happy with me.
Yeah.
And Connecticut law. Number 11, shall the town charter be amended to provide for the Board of Selectmen to consider charter review at intervals of no less than every 10 years?
I just have a quick question. Can you just explain a little bit more, number 8? Does that are you basically saying it doesn't go to town meeting? Or, I'm just kind of,
yes, what it does in that case, if Parks and Rec came for an appropriation of $80,000, it wouldn't have to go there. But if they came back 6 months later for 25, it's over 100,000, then it would require a town meeting.
so it would always go through Board of Selectmen and Board of Finance?
It always goes
That's
to the
it.
Board of
Okay,
Selectmen and Finance.
understood. Okay,
That
All
hasn't
right.
changed.
all set. Thank you.
Okay.
Should town charter be capitalized? As
And
opposed
the
to
You know,
town.
I went back and forth with that, Ms. Hardy,
Yeah.
and I noticed that it never was before. I looked at ballot questions from '09 and ballot questions from '04, which the world's expert Edward B. O'Connell drafted, and so I am not going to argue with the expert.
I just wonder because we're referring to a specific document.
And I agree with you, and
Yeah.
sometimes I did it, so I'm happy to change it because I did struggle with that.
Dan?
I think it should be lowercase, because it's not East Lyme Charter. If you were naming the municipality, then I think you'd want to capitalize both. But it's you're referencing, we know it's East Lyme.
Yes.
But I think it should be lowercase. So I'd stick with lowercase.
Is it town charter? Is the label on the town charter, or is it East Lyme Town Charter?
Oh, the town charter.
You know what I mean? Because if it's East Lyme Town Charter, then this could probably stay lowercase.
I should say, I've looked at
I could run and grab a
hundreds
copy.
of ballot questions
Yeah.
from other municipalities.
Yeah,
Charter
And-
of the Town of East Lyme.
And I never see it capitalized.
yeah, okay. Then I would leave it.
Okay, we're all set there. Any other questions on the revised ballot questions?
Yeah, number 11, I had a question on. In the event that the state was to change something that made our town charter no longer valid, there's some kind of conflict with the charter. This says we can't We can't review it for less than 10 years.
No, at intervals of no less than every 10. So in other words,
Yep, I got it, yep.
yeah.
So
Sorry.
our charter now says that it can be amended at any time, which is what the state statutes allow. And I think the commission felt strongly that at a minimum, the Board of Selectmen should vote whether to appoint a charter commission every 10 years. So you're not going to be required to appoint, or future boards will not be required to appoint a charter review commission, but they must at least vote on it. As you know, the last one was in '09, and I think many people felt that
Yeah, we had been
it's a long
for a
time.
few years about that. And
So on number 9, did you want to say also, it says shall the charter, did you want to change that to town charter?
Yes.
Just to make it
Yeah, no,
parallel?
Yes.
Okay.
yeah, that's what I mean.
So wouldn't it be?
Yeah, the two towns there. Yeah.
So
Yes.
she put town there, town,
Yes.
okay.
So Tracy, when you do, there'll be, I guess you're coming to that, but there will be an explanatory.
We're getting to that.
Okay.
That's going to be very important
Yeah.
Yes,
in light of
yeah.
these questions.
Which hope everyone reads
Yes.
ahead of time.
I should tell you that you do have the option of having one ballot question. You could say, do you accept the proposed charter revisions? Obviously, I don't recommend that.
No.
No.
Yeah.
No.
No, I think, and one of the things too is we made sure that anything to do with election of individuals or appointment of people to elective offices were the top 4. So those,
Yeah.
make sure people, and obviously I think that, in the order of importance too.
I would think that there'd be a lack of transparency because people would be confused, not know,
Well, that's
what it is.
Yeah.
So
No, that's
I
just it. And
think
here
you
again,
need to clarify
transparency
it.
is the thing we always hear.
Yeah.
This is
This is
fun.
as clear as you
Yeah.
can get,
So,
yeah.
now Tracy, you have a resolution for us for,
I have one other comment.
Oh.
I'm sorry.
sure.
I just, on number 7, is it, I struggle with this. Is it clear to say amended, right now it says amended to not require? If you transpose those two, if it said, shall the town charter be amended not to require?
Oh, because you're separating
Yeah.
the verb. So you basically split it. Shall
So
the town
basically,
charter-
looking at the rest of them, they're amended so or amended to. That's your format,
No.
I see,
Versus-
yeah, that's true. Okay,
I
Okay.
think it should stay as it is.
all right.
Yeah, I've read this so many times. And Tracy and I realize.
Well, I'm just thankful we didn't use the term notwithstanding.
I
Exactly.
know.
Nuts on that one.
Notwithstanding.
I can say that the first selectman and I spoke about 100 times last week while I was on
On
vacation.
vacation.
Oh,
yeah.
no.
Yeah. And Mark Salerno too. I mean,
Oh,
so
yes.
there was a good
You gotta
combination.
go out of the country, so you
That's
have no
right.
cell service.
No, that's-
All right.
Okay,
I'm still on the wording for number 11, I'm sorry.
11.
The interval should be no more than 10 years, not no less than 10 years. The interval should be no more than 10 years.
What, are we trying to say that at least every 10 years they have to have?
Yes, I think that's where we're at. We're at least.
I think maybe it will be helpful to you if we look at the charter section that says that.
Okay.
But when I read that, I thought it meant that we had to wait 10 years before we could have another charter.
Yeah,
And that's what
it
no less
suggests
than
that.
says.
This
It
is
has
no
to be
less
at
than.
least 10 years between intervals.
Yeah.
That's what this says.
oh, of no more than every 10
It
years.
should be no more than.
Okay.
Charter review intervals of no less. than- It means that you could have a revision commission in 5 years
Yeah.
or 4 years.
How about,
But by 10 years.
I think, I did think a lot about that one, and I spoke to other, Attorney Marion of my office and asked her what she thought, because she's doing Lebanon's ballot questions now, and she agreed with me on this one, and I'm thinking that
Yeah.
if you look at
yeah, where
All right.
is that?
where it appears,
Exhibit
it's in
A.
section 8.
So So when it gets to 10 years, if you haven't had a charter revision commission, you need to have one with the.
Well, you need to talk about
You
that.
You need to vote whether to have one. And if you look at page 26 on Exhibit A,
26.
That's the last page.
it's section 8.4, which begins on 25, but that's just the title.
Yeah.
It says, "This charter may be amended at any time in the manner prescribed by the general statutes," which is whenever the Board of Selectmen decides to.
Okay.
Future charter revisions shall include a revision record of changes. In addition, commencing in 2033 and decennially thereafter, the Board of Selectmen shall vote to determine whether to appoint a charter revision commission in accordance with the Connecticut general statutes. So I think that the ballot question is appropriate, considering the Board of Selectmen has the authority to do it at any time, but it can't be less than every 10 years.
Okay, I agree. I'm done now. Again.
Can't be less than every 10 years. Why can't it be? If it's done every 5 years, that's less than every 10 years.
It can be done at any time.
Yeah.
You could do another one, after this referendum. You could do another one, but you have to at least consider it once every 10 years.
So I think the language in red has to be what you're addressing in this ballot question 11. And that alone. Well, although you've got this amended at any time.
No.
Tracy, what was in that provision, in that section on page 26? And the charter may be amended. In the first sentence, what did it say before the language "at any time" is added there?
You mean in
Like
the...
what the original, our charter as it stands, because
If you look at page 26,
I do.
it
5 years is less than 10 years.
It said the
that's
charter
allowed.
may be amended. It didn't have the words any time, at any time,
so, okay.
in the manner prescribed by the general statutes, but the general statute says it's any time.
Time. Oh,
So I just
okay.
decided to put that in there so it's clearer.
Okay,
Or not me, the Charter Commission.
correct. So basically, and then we have the 10-year, ticking clock, so to speak. So there's two things going on. So should that, I guess, the question should really address both those issues. It would be able to achieve a yes or no answer to those two points.
But it's not really, what the ballot question should be addressing is a revision. And I don't consider the first part of that a
Okay.
revision, because we already, under the charter, the Board of Selectmen has the authority to appoint a charter review commission at any time. That's what the statute says.
Okay.
I think the only thing that you're deciding on a ballot question, because it's already been recommended by the Charter Revision Commission that you have to vote at least once every 10 years, is that particular question.
Okay, so you're
Understood,
looking at that at any time language as just kind of procedural here and just sort of a cleanup because of the previous language encompasses it, but it's not overt here.
Yes,
Yeah, okay.
yes, and I want it to be,
express.
yes, but
Okay.
if you look at the statute, it says it can happen at any time,
Right,
and that's
right,
why I felt
okay.
for clarity.
All right, so we won't worry about that until you do your little explanation page.
So she's basically saying it can be done at any time, but at a minimum, every 10 years, it has to be considered.
Correct.
That's basically what you're saying.
Yes.
Okay.
I kind of
Got it.
agree with Bill that I'd like to see that last clause, at intervals of
How about at a
10 years.
minimum?
At a minimum or 10 years,
Of
10 years
every
or
10 years?
or less. I mean, it's
Yeah.
10 years or less.
Because I don't get, when I read it,
Yeah, it doesn't pop.
and
it doesn't.
someone in a booth is not
No.
Yeah, they're
By that
never
point,
gonna
they're just going to
understand.
say yes or no anyway. They're not gonna- Let's be real.
That's right, by the 11th question, but intervals of every 10 years or less. How's that?
Every,
How about of at least every 10 years?
at a minimum, what about at a minimum of every 10 years?
I like it the way it is.
Intervals of every 10 years or less.
No. All right.
So at least-
Intervals.
At least every 10 years.
Do we have a recommendation? I mean, I know
Well,
everyone's talking.
Yeah, but my recommendation was after the word intervals, so at intervals of every 10 years or less.
Tracy, is that all right with you?
Intervals.
No.
I
Okay,
think
yeah.
that may
So
be,
This
that,
isn't going to set a legal precedent.
I know.
I know. We just want some clarity.
Yeah.
I just,
I mean, if there was, I think enough of us here who felt there was something a little bit.
so what are we trying to, are we trying to say?
We're basically trying to say that the charter reviewed at least once every 10 years, but anytime it needs to be reviewed, it can be.
And it's
but our
considered-
current charter already says it can be amended at any time.
But we're saying it, even in spite of that, that at least once every 10 years, you got to take a look at it.
I think if I had to
Okay,
choose,
all right.
I would probably go with Mr. Cunningham's recommendation that shall the town charter be amended to provide for the Board of Selectmen to consider charter review at intervals of a minimum of every 10 years.
Okay.
Okay,
Yeah,
All
okay.
right, that's what I said.
okay. Are we all good with that change?
I'm
Yeah.
opposed, but that's okay.
Yeah.
We're not lawyers, we don't know.
I know, but our lawyer wrote it.
So town
Yeah, it's
charter
just-
with River versus Johnson.
I think, for me, that's clear. but I don't
Yeah,
think-
I think it
I
is
think they're
too.
kind
That's
of
what I-
equivalent because
Yeah.
you'd used the word less before, so I was just trying to
Yeah.
use the same words, but
Yeah.
it's the same thing.
Yeah,
Okay, that's good.
all right.
At intervals of a minimum of every 10 years.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Okay.
And that would track your language that's actually proposed in the charter. Okay,
yeah.
Good enough.
I agree.
Do you have a resolution for it?
Yeah, I've got a resolution. Look at that.
I do have a
No, no, not-
resolution.
not that one.
Not yet. This one?
No.
This is the ballot questions? No? That's what
Yes,
I have.
Oh, yeah.
I
Yes.
gave that to Ms. Santoro.
Okay,
and-
that's
and
right.
to you.
Okay.
That's not the other one.
No,
Okay.
not yet.
Okay.
Okay. A resolution approving ballot questions for proposed charter amendments. Whereas the East Lyme Board of Selectmen has reviewed the ballot questions regarding proposed charter amendments to be submitted to the electors of the town of East Lyme for approval or rejection at the regular election to be held on November 7, 2023. It is hereby resolved that said ballot questions be submitted to the electors of the town of East Lyme for approval or rejection at the regular election to be held on November 7, 2023, in accordance with Connecticut General Statute, Section 7-191F.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second. Any last comments? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? It carries unanimously. Now we're going to talk the next part. One of the things that we want to make sure is that as many people get the background on the information that's going to be coming for them as possible. We'll obviously have it on the website, the questions. We'll also have it on social media and any possible way we can get it out. But this is where people really want, I think we need to get as much information as possible. I'd like to consider even up to including a mailer to where every registered, and we can make sure that there's ways to make sure that if there's 4 people registered to vote in the House, they don't get 4 letters. They'll get 1. There's ways to do that. That's not a problem. But looking at a way to do this. But we have to, and that would explain the ballot questions and what you'll be voting on. But it cannot in any way advocate pro or con. And I'll let Tracy talk to that. She gave us a little bit of a handout here to talk to that.
Does everyone have a copy of the handout?
Yes.
Yes, thanks.
So it's important for every public official to know that as soon as a referendum date has been set, any questions which are going to appear on the ballot no public funds can be used to advocate for any position on the ballot. And it's a very technical statute. I know that public officials have gotten caught by this one before, but I do also know that the Election Commission has ruled time and time again that it's very broad what the definition of use of public funds is to advocate for a position. And that is using the town's email servers, using the town's website. I mean, there have been instances where perhaps a selectman was being interviewed by the local radio show, but you have to make sure that they're on their personal phone and not on the town's phone if it's not in person. So the best way to explain ballot questions to the voters is through this process that's provided in the state statute. And basically, it's up at the top there. An explanatory text has been the exclusive method by which a municipality could expend public funds for printing and distribution of explanation of the subject matter of a referendum. And there are 4 requirements. A vote of the municipality's legislative bodies is needed to authorize it. I prepared a resolution for you tonight if you decide you want this. The municipal clerk must prepare the text and the municipal attorney must approve it. It must specify the intent and purpose of each referendum question. That means ballot question. And cannot advocate either the approval or the disapproval of the referendum. And then if you do authorize that, you can use public funds. You can post it on the town's website, you can put it into print, you can use town funds to do that. And I really recommend that you do that if you want to explain this. One thing that I would also recommend, my thought is, we've never done this before, the town has never utilized this statute before, either in '04 or '09. I'm not really sure why, but if I were to prepare one, or Ms. Galbo would with my oversight and approval, I would recommend that they be very short explanations, that it's not going to be a 3-paragraph explanation. I think the voters won't comprehend it. Some would take 1 sentence, some may require more than 2 sentences, but my goal would be to keep it short, to the point, and make sure it's not advocating for any position.
I think, yeah, so, you know, here I'm sorry, Ann, go
So
ahead.
I just have a question then.
Yes.
So does this also then, like, relate to if somebody asks us as, like, Board of Selectmen, like, about the referendum questions, do we just direct them to that and say, you know, we can't talk about it? Like, are we, you know what I mean?
That's a very good question. And my advice would be, as long as you're not advocating for any, a yes or a no on that ballot question, you're certainly free to explain your understanding of it and then maybe redirect them to this explanatory text. But if a citizen said to you, are you going to recommend that I vote for number 7? You're going to say, I'm not allowed to advocate a yes or a no on any ballot question.
So it's probably better just to direct them to that for, and then,
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, we wouldn't be expending any town funds if we were to sit at the beach talking to Joe Smith and saying, yeah, I think it's really important that we do number 7 because that's going to make us more efficient and the town will be better for...
Yes, I agree with you. The context is everything. So certainly if you're at the beach and your buddy asks you, how do you feel about question number 5? you could say, this is how I feel. But I wouldn't recommend that you do it in a town-owned building. I wouldn't recommend that you do it, certainly not in an email, the email that's issued to you by the town. I do know that in prior selectmen, first selectmen, have been interviewed by a radio station, and that was live, and that was okay. But just as long as you know, once the referendum date is set, which you've set it tonight, you are not allowed to expend any public funds to advocate for a position on the ballot questions.
Okay, so just a follow-up question then. So there's an election coming up in November. So if people are, say, out campaigning or canvassing and you're asked questions, are you allowed to respond? Or
Yes.
how would you respond, I guess? is
Because
more the question.
you're when you're campaigning, you're on your own time.
Okay, all right, understood.
And you're
All
not
right,
using
that's
any
the
town
distinction.
funds.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah,
That's the point I was
understood.
trying to make.
Yeah,
is that
that's
if
what I'm
it's
trying to
not-
understand,
If it's
yeah.
not in this building, if I'm not using the
Right.
town's email, if I'm not
Right,
using
right.
the town's
Yeah.
cell phone, if I'm just playing poker with the guy saying, you know, I really think number 7's important. I mean, it seems like it's.
You can exercise your
Okay.
First Amendment right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's-
Well, no, but I
Yes.
didn't know, what, like, you know, if
No,
they're
it's
saying if
true.
this is
Yeah,
all
I mean,
prohibited, I didn't
right.
know. what
Yeah.
And you were
Yeah.
just picking number 7 just as an example, not be.
Actually, look at what number 7 is.
And I think I'm being rather extreme in my position on this because it is such a fine line, and I hate for people to take risks, but
Yeah.
certainly on your own time. And your constituents are going to may want you to weigh in on that.
Well, that's why I was asking.
Yes, and
Exactly.
certainly you're
That's-
allowed to
yes, I was
do
trying
that
figure
on
out.
your own time,
Mhm.
but be wary about blast emails, vote for question number 5, or whatever it is.
Well,
Okay.
it's just like if I was at the senior center and the luncheon and the question's asked and I tell them what my opinion is in a town building and someone's going to have it's going to be on Facebook that night and, you know, that would not be.
And it has happened time and time again.
Of
There
course.
have been complaints, some legitimate, some not.
Yeah.
And that would then nullify the referendum?
No, it'd be a
Or what would
violation
do?
for that individual.
It would be
As an
election
individual.
commission violation.
And then what's the consequence of that?
You could be sanctioned by the state election commission.
Okay.
And I made sure Karen Galvo was notified of this before we decided to move forward. I went in, she was talking to someone, I said, I left something on your desk, you might want to read it. She did, and she's okay with it.
I have one more thing that I just wanted to inform you of. It's not in a resolution, but in accordance with the state statute, either the entire charter has to be published within 30 days from tonight, or certain portions of it have to be, the portions that are being changed have to be published. I asked Ms. Anderson to get a quote on publishing the whole thing, and it was $10,000.
We've come up with a better idea.
Yes, so I'm going to work with Ally Christensen to get that done, because
She's offered to give
we
some
can't
intern
give
help.
track changes to the day either, so it's going to take a little manipulating of a Word document.
Yeah, we're not,
That's good.
because I'd rather, yeah. And the thing is, that whole, and nobody would really look at it anyway, to
I
be honest with
know.
you, very few
I
people.
know.
And it's online, people can review it there, so we do have that ability, but we have got to put something in the paper.
Right, right.
So we'll be taking care of that.
Okay. All right, so I think we have one last motion on that explanatory text.
Right.
Okay, we're ready for that? Okay.
Yes.
Okay, move the following. Resolve that in accordance with Connecticut General Statute Section 9-369BA, the town clerk shall prepare an explanatory text which must specify the intent and purpose of each ballot question regarding proposed charter amendments to be submitted to the electors of the town of East Lyme for approval or rejection at the regular election to be held on November 7, 2023. Said explanatory text shall not advocate either the approval or disapproval of each question and shall be approved by the town attorney prior to its distribution.
Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded. Any questions, comments?
So you,
Go ahead.
I'm sorry. You mentioned publishing something, maybe putting it in the mail, or you just talked about putting it online?
No, we're going to prepare, no, these will, what we're looking at possibly doing, we can come back for approval once we get that done, is to send some type of mailer out to try and hit every household in the town, because we want to be sure something of this nature is seen by as many people as
No,
possible.
I fully agree with that. My question was just going to be, do we have a budget for what that's going to cost?
Yes, we do.
Okay. That was my only question. Money,
Okay.
money, money.
Okay, all those in favor of the motion, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions, carried unanimously. Okay, that concludes our discussion action items. We've been here a long time. Is there anybody that needs to make an ex officio report, or can we, anybody needs to make one?
No.
None,
Not
okay.
scheduled in hell.
I will do that. Communications, we did get a very nice thank you from our scholarship winner, Isabella, that was in there. It was really nice seeing her come to and speak to us about what her plans are for the future. It was really very nice. So
That's great.
anyway, any public comment? Okay, so there's no response, and we'll just have a short executive session just to bring you up to date. Need a motion for that?
Yes, okay, so, move to enter into executive session for the purpose of discussing real estate matters, East Lyme Land Trust, Oswegatchie Hills, Hathaway Farms property. We're entering into executive session at 9:12 PM.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? We are in executive session. We're going to take a short break.
The board had entered into executive session at 9:12 PM, and we've returned at 9:38, and no formal votes were taken. Okay. Move to adjourn the regular meeting of July 5th, 2023 at 9:38.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. We are adjourned. Thank you.
All right. Good job.